Welcome back. I'm really honored to moderate this session about digitalization and technological evolution, or better, revolution as suggested by its title. We'll be able to listen to the valuable opinion of some of the protagonists from different areas of the shipping industry. Let me introduce them. Mr. Mark Cameron, Executive Vice President and CEO at Ardmore Shipping. Alexandra Chupateras, Executive Vice President, Business Development, Dorian LPG. Stephen McFarlane, CIO, V Group. Olav Nortun, CEO, Thome Group, and Mark O'Neill, President of Columbia Ship Management. During the pandemic, technology has proved its potential to avoid or minimize business disruption in several sectors like never before. The COVID-19 outbreak put a lot of emphasis on technology, enabling remote activities such as inspections, surveys, audits, and verifications of all kinds. This was an ongoing trend pre-COVID crisis, but it has now gained greater focus. In the future, ships will be largely covered by autonomous processes, and this push for more and more automation on board will be even more accelerated. Online monitoring will be facilitated by the increased ship's connectivity and hopefully by the reduction of the data transmission costs. Dear speakers, we are looking forward to understanding what was your company's reactions and solutions to assure, for example, resilience in your supply chain, maintenance of operation, and what are the technologies that have supported you most in the last months. And in general, which you think will be the next game changers for the shipping and maritime business. Let me start with Alex. Alex, in which areas of maritime operation do you see the deployment of big data and data processing techniques could be a real game changer? In particular, do you think shipping could be cross-fertilized by other industry sectors where application of such technology is more mature?
Thank you, Paolo, and I'm delighted to be speaking at Capital Link in this seminar. I think that leading up to this year, there was a lot of focus on big data and analytics around speed and consumption, specifically with the changes in the IMO regulations in terms of making savings regarding differences in fuel quality. For the future, I see a lot of focus also on safety and navigation. Shell, for example, pioneered something called high-low, high frequency, high impact, low frequency, where companies share data between each other anonymously to help improve, help predict incidents, to look at trends, to predict an incident before it happens, to stop it. So I think if you take, for example, the New York Police Department, they've been using predictive statistics in terms of where to deploy police officers to stop crimes from happening. I think that shipping has historically been laggard, and we're embracing these technologies, not just to save costs on fuel, but to improve safety and navigation on board.
Good. That is a good point. That's very interesting. Mark O'Neill, I would like also you to give us some hint on what your company, that is a very important ship management company, is doing, but also, since you are a maritime lawyer, also to tell us something about what you think about these data. They are considered so valuable. They are considered like the new currency, but sometimes we are also concerned about how to address the data ownership, their increased security challenges, and what about data ownerships, and where do you see the most critical situations in our sector?
Hi everybody. Delighted to be part of Capital Link's conference. I think, what are we doing as Columbia in relation to digitalization and technology? I think probably about a year and a half ago, we were certainly on the digital wave, if not ahead of the digital wave, insofar as we set up and invested in extensively our performance optimization control room. We were always of the opinion that digitalization is just the means and optimization is actually the end. What people actually do with the digitalization is what matters. You can digitalize everything, but you don't need to digitalize everything. You just need to digitalize those parts of your business that are actually worth digitalizing, and most importantly, what the client actually needs. So with the performance optimization control room, we felt we had got it right for our clients, and we were on the right position on the digital wave. Then COVID-19 hit us and hit us all. And I was thinking before this conference of the appropriate analogy to make, and it was rather like the proverb, you know, dragging the proverbial horse to the water and really sticking its head in the trough and making it drink from the digitalization trough, or as Nicholas said just before we started this, he took a crash course in IT over the last few months. I think COVID-19 caused the digitalization asteroid to hit planet Earth, and all of the dinosaurs were wiped out in one fell swoop. You know, all of our businesses have been dragged kicking and screaming into the digital age, and you know, we find platforms like this no longer intimidating and quite the norm. Probably all of us on this platform, we've had 4 or 5 of these in any single day. So our businesses have been radically transformed, and digitalization is with us whether we like it or not. Now, as far as data is concerned, of course, all of this digitalization is producing huge amounts of data. And again, like my initial comment with digitalization, we've got to be absolutely certain what data we need and harvest that data. Otherwise, we will just spend our time chasing our tails and trying to harvest everything with no measurable results or benefits from that. So I think with regard to the data that is produced, it has to be relevant. It has to be harvested in an economical way. There's absolutely no point in employing an army of data processors and harvesters when actually you're trying to use digitalization to economize, to achieve those economies of scale. And of course, we have to protect the data. There's no point in me trying to sell to clients our performance optimization control room if those clients are going to have concerns about the confidentiality of their data, which they don't need to have concerns. It's all entirely confidential. So the very same issues that apply to personal data will apply to commercial data as well. And of course, there's huge value in this data by various organizations wanting to harvest it for their own means. And of course, it's confidential to clients. So relevance of data, the methodology of harvesting that data, and protecting the confidentiality of that data is very, very important. But you know, it is upon us now. So those of us who may have had quandaries about digitalization as to when they get involved in that process before COVID-19, that is over. And if you're not up to your neck in it and using it and familiar with it, then you'll probably find you've been left behind.
Yes, I fully agree. Mark Cameron, in some recent interviews, you seem to cast a little shadow on the enthusiastic approach to the digital race taking place among your peers. Has the current COVID emergency made you change your mind, at least partially, and in which ways?
Yeah, thanks, Paolo, and thanks also Capital Link for the opportunity. I think in expressing a balanced view around digitalization and particularly the euphoria around it, it doesn't make you anti-technology. And what it is perhaps some of the experience of the past, because, you know, to me, digitalization isn't as new as many people make it out to be. I agree with a lot of what Mark has said there, and I think there's some very, very valid points that he's raised. If I use an example of what I think is a great platform for trying to digitalize information, I'd use Q88. I think Q88 takes data in and it puts it out into 100 different formats or even more that clients want. But that's still a very simple input level on board the ship. And the only real people they're trying to help here are the guys on board the ship who are sick and tired of entering in LOA, LBP, and all that basic data time after time after time. Why is it that we're talking about what COVID's done for us, but we're still all sitting with 4 or at least 4 noon reports being generated on ships, very often manually plugged in by the same people with the same information, presented in different formats? So I think we have to look at digitalization as a way to try to help ship staff to overcome some of this time-wasting, error-inducing sort of information format that is just so repetitive. I think if you are a chief mate on board a 24,000 TEU container ship, you absolutely need digitalization to help you load that ship. Now, we run tankers. Our discharge and loading sequences on tankers are very manual. You know, we're not going to necessarily be digitalizing that part of the process. Yes, we have tank soundings. Yes, we have great soundings in our tanks and readings, but we still need the people on board. We still need the people to be able to feel, to touch, to sense and smell. I think if you look around the world at the amount of data that is required, data breeds data. And if you look at port clearances that are required in different parts of the world, again, it's an insane amount of information that's being pushed around. So I think, you know, we've got to tone it down a bit to practical levels to say consistency matters in the outputs that people want, and the actual genuine request for relevant information is very important. I think, you know, when we talk about big data, I've always made the point that perhaps hasn't really been understood, that little data for me is what values. Data in the hands of the people who can actually do something about it, not in that army of analysts sitting back in an office trying to discover a trend 3 months later. That's of no use to me. Data in the hands of the guys who can make a difference are generally the bridge team or the engineers on board the ship. Start with trying to make their lives a little bit better and a little bit easier, and we can really start to reap the benefits of it. Another criticism I have is that when you buy a second-hand ship, you lose all of that data. It's not transferred. Technical managers will not let data move from one owner to another. And I think it's time we change that. Because if we really talk about the wealth of data, it has to be part of a transaction when you buy and sell a ship. And this outdated approach towards, you know, the risk of transferring databases of maintenance is just silly. So I would also say that in terms of technology, the playground or the test ground for technology is not on board the ships in real life. Very often now we get a lot of prototypes that come out that don't have proper testing in an environment that makes it safe to do so. So I think, yes, we are pro-technology. Yes, we are pro-digitalization. But let's remember who it's there to serve in the first place. And from there, see what benefits we can get.
That's a good point. So not big data, but as you said, little data at the service of the operators at the end, the people on board. Olav, many corporates claim they are adopting strategies to accelerate innovation and incubate less mature technologies, such as collaboration with technology partners and startups. Your company is based in Singapore, a very lively hub in this regard. I'd like to know, how do you design your company's innovation strategy? How do you choose where to address your investments in new technology?
Yeah. Paolo, thank you for the question, and thank you to Capital Link for having us on the stage, so to speak. You know, I think leaning a little bit back was talked about when we look at the strategy and we look at innovation as a complement of what shapes the strategy moving forward, not only for today but for the years to come. And I think if we're looking at how we overcome part of the challenge during lockdown, it's not because of technology we invented now and here. It was technology that was available. So you need to always have a forward-looking time. You know, what do you want to do? And so our focus, and most of our focus, is actually on using existing technology to look for improvements. You know, basically an incremental innovation. We spend time on disruptive technology as well, but most is on the improvement part, because we have a quest for improvement. You know, we want to pursue improvement as we move along, step by step. And there is no such single business that actually possess all the expertise and have all the solution. So we need to be active in seeking out partners. Just going to find where are they and who are they and all that. And the fact that you're lucky to be in a live place and hub like Singapore, with, you know, it's a great startup hub in Asia and in the world as well, where you have this expertise, where you have the network with global connectivity, you have access to top talents, to research organization. There is a multiple of possible opportunity to co-invent together with partners, including government agencies and multiple organizations, and multinational organizations. So, you know, and as an example, we spend time with the National University of Singapore. They have resources we don't have and now any attention to have. So we go and seek where they are, the academia. We are actively involved and spend time with tech ventures like those linked to Pier 71 here in Singapore. We look for accelerators where we find startups looking at stuff that we don't look at. looking at those who can actually help with solving the challenge, whether it's small or big. So what we do when we engage, we offer them a partnership where they can test, and we can be a testing ground, a trial for some of their solution, where they can learn and take the learning with them when they move forward onto the next stage of development. And we have learned to form part of the solution we're looking for. And this is the building these capabilities, I think is a good type of partnership we're looking for. And this is the crux of these things, because none of us have all the solutions, then it all will be solved. So just to get a few examples, over the time, we in our quest for data and data collection and digitalization, we developed a tool looking at our environmental footprint, about the fleet energy and efficiency, just to be able to help and support the vessel on what can it do to improve. Not for us in the office sitting, okay, looking good or bad, just to help them to improve it. It's important that it's there. It's like Mark Cameron said, it's not happening in the office, it's happening on board. We're also spending time and effort on predictive analytics, because it's a little bit to help and plan how we want maintenance to be done, how we want dockings to be done, how we want the vessel to how can we influence and get the best possible utilization. So we use predictive analytics today, developing together with partner. It's okay, how can we better assess the vessels in the position they are in, whether it's on the voyage, or whether it's leading up to docking. Another part also, we see that in these times of COVID, and we have for quite a while been spending time with 2 partners to develop remote inspection programs. For us to not have to fly all of superintendents, all of inspectors all around the world to look at the vessel. Can some of this be done? Can it be done to help the crew on doing the maintenance? Can we give them guidance through it? So, and this we can't do alone. So we're spending time with them. And there's another part of how we assess and driven ourselves is that we see that we need to align internally. A common banner. If not, a common quest, so to speak. If not, innovation becomes quite fragmented. And we continue to seek to improve existing functions as a priority. And then we help identify those technologies can take the next step and the next step. And by that, we lay the groundwork, because we also need to develop an organization at the same time to understand what we're doing. So, you need to learn the new trick of the trade, and you need to drive the organization with you. It doesn't help to run away with technology when the organization is ready to adopt it. So that's an important part of how we develop our strategy around this. And this spin-off is that we also, in this, looking for possibilities, looking at what kind of technological development is happening. And one thing for sure, being here in Singapore, have access to startups, to innovators, it's a perfect place to be, to actually look at what's happening and not be lost in, or not be losing the track of development. You don't have to take all into you on, but you have to pick and choose which you think suits you best. And as long as we stick within the incremental one and then looking for the disruptive one, I think we are in a spot at least we should be able to solve the immediate problem as we're moving forward and not taking the big quantum leaps. So that's where we are on our development and our innovation. Thank you, Paolo.
Thank you, Olav. Thank you for sharing very clear and inspiring. Stefan, the best digital strategies focus on humans. This is something that has been touched also by the other speakers up to now. It is human ingenuity that determines how technologies is exploited to affect better human outcomes. But the rise of new also increases the need of specialized skills. Would you like to tell us about your company's approach to the human element in this new digital era?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paolo. Good afternoon, everyone. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the human element is critical. If you don't bring your people, your customers, your seafarers along for this journey, you're not going to get the buy-in, and you're not going to get the success that you're looking for from that. And it's interesting to listen to the others, because it's a similar. I hear similar threads from everyone. I mean, our approach really, when we started to redevelop our Shipshore digital platform, is we sort of put the technology aside for a while at the beginning, and we focused on the people. So what we did is we had about 160 of our shore employees, 100 of our sort of sea staff, and focus groups from our customers together talking about information. What do they do today? What will they do in the future? and we actually visited the ships as well. So we visited container ships, bulk carriers, cruise ships, and we got a feel for what it was like on board in both digital information and manual information. So what's the information space they're living in? And it's quite interesting. We went ourselves, but we also used some external consultants who specialize in this area. And when you sit down with somebody, the first thing they do is they take you and show you your screen. And they say, this is what I do. But actually, you step back from that and you say, well, what do you actually do? So you talk to the chief engineer and you say, well, what's that in your top pocket? What's in your notepad that you need to put in your notepad that you don't have? And why do you then have to take your notepad and put it into a computer? I remember sitting with a superintendent and our digital consultant just looked over at him, and the superintendent thought the meeting had finished, and he said, no, I want you to show me what you wrote down in your notepad. Because as information was flowing into him, he was putting information down on paper as well. So early on for us, we had that human interaction to say, look, we're not going to build you a platform. You're going to build a platform. You're going to be participating in that. What's your information? What do you need? What's your calls to action? And how do we sort of focus on a sort of value outcome? So that was one element of it. Getting that information up front. Don't dive in and think what people want, build those dashboards or whatever it is. Actually we started very early on talking to people before we even cut any software code. And then additionally, and it's very interesting to listen to Mark and Olav as well, what we focused on in our scenario was what I call pervasive BI. So our business intelligence is not really built around a big dashboard sitting on the wall telling us our fleet's health. We have that, but actually BI is built into people's daily operations. So the business intelligence is actually built to tell you what's happening on your ship, what's important, what can you do to improve your day-to-day interaction, and that leads to improved performance for the organization and for the vessel and for your customers. So what we actually done is you've got intelligent insights, you've got calls to action, you've got knowledge management as part of your daily function. So we've integrated our people right into our BI and digitalization program. And at the bit early on that we did, where we sat down with the people and went on the cruise ship and went on the tanker and looked at what they did, is we had to understand that first. We had to get that human interaction, excuse me, working. And what we end up with, and it's sometimes described as sort of analytics or computing at the edge, what we actually did is we didn't take all that data off the ship and analyze it and then go back and tell them what to do. We actually analyzed that data on the ship so that the ship staff, the chief engineer and the captain, actually, they have their own dashboard. They have a real-time dashboard on board, and it's telling them what's happening on their ship. It brings all of their information together. So they've gone from, historically, I record stuff, I throw it to the office, they come back, they tell me what to do, to I'm part of that digital ecosystem. And the feedback we're getting from our ship staff is that they really like it. We're getting really good feedback. We like our dashboards. We like being part of this approach. So it's not all about shipping data ashore, analyzing, because you can make decisions on the ships very quickly if you give them the right data. And that's sort of our approach. And then we do the analysis ashore when we're looking for greater insights as well. So I think for me, the key is early on, bring your end users in right at the start of the journey is absolutely critical. Keep them with you through the journey. So don't just take their ideas and come back 2 years later and say, we think we know what you want. Take them through the journey. And then when you go to implement your solutions, is give them the right training and the coaching to understand what are the overall objectives of what you're trying to achieve. And then I think, if you win the hearts and minds of the people, whether they're ashore, at sea, your customers, they're going to help you transform yourself into a data-driven organization. So I think it's a journey for everyone, but the great advantage I think we've got is if I go back 5 years ago, people were still telling me that the guys in the ships, they struggle to use computers. It's not the case now. They're almost pushing us for technology. So it's a great position to be in, but let's give them the technology to use. So that's sort of how we've approached it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very clear, and of course you have the possibility really to view and to discuss and to test all these things with a very large number of crews and ships. So now let's move to one of the topics of the greatest interest for the industry, that is about autonomous ships. Autonomous ships, we are asking always ourselves which degree of autonomy we will reach, for which routes and type of voyages. What do you expect to be the state of the art in the next 10, 20 or 30 years? This is a question that I want to make to all of you. And I will start with Alex, asking again, do you expect to have a huge percentage in the next years? Are they rather fully autonomous or remotely operated? What is your feeling, Alex?
Thank you, Paolo. And I just wanted to add one point to the first part of the session, but I think it's also a segue to autonomous ships, which is we wouldn't even be sitting here having this panel if connectivity to the vessels hadn't improved as much as it has over the last 5 years. It's in fact doubled, and the vessels are always connected and always on. So to that point, talking about autonomous ships, few companies like Kongsberg are doing tests, and all the ingredients are there in terms of sensors and sort of the algorithms to assess the data for safe navigation. Commercially, putting a commercial hat on, I tend to think that it's medium to longer term away for commercial vessels. But in terms of A to B route, a sort of short ferry passage, or testing it out in terms of how we've seen self-driving cars, I think, yes, in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see these vessels operating. So I think the ingredients are there. And it's just going to be an evolution. I think it's definitely inevitable that it will happen. I don't know. I believe there will be crew on some of the vessels. I find it hard to believe have no crew to monitor the situation. But many of the functions will be fully automated.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Stefan, how are you organizing within the group? What is your perception? Is it going to be fully automated vessel, ocean going, remotely operated with less crew? What is your feeling?
I think ultimately we're probably going to get to that, but it's a fairly longer term objective. I think at the moment, we probably have the technology now to remotely navigate a vessel. And over the next 10 years, as Alex says, we'll probably explore that more. I think the journey the industry is going to be on is we've got to make the vessels cleaner. We've got to make the fuels cleaner. We produce waste, we produce water, we produce lots of different things in those vessels. So the actual objective really is, we're going to build an autonomous vessel. It sort of links in a little bit with what we're doing on sulfur cap and IMO 2050. As cleaner fuels come in and greater reliability comes in. I mean, in the ship's engine is quite a reliable piece of kit, but it has a lot of equipment around it to support it and make it become reliable, and that takes people. So the journey really is explore the autonomous navigation, but then look at how we make the actual engineering side of the vessel much more reliable and towards an autonomous future. So I think it will come, but I think it'll be driven by other factors as well, such as cleaner fuel. It will mean a new approach to building vessels. So that's my view on it.
Yeah. Yes. Mark O'Neill, I'd like to have your view, and also, again, I'm challenging your lawyer skills. If you foresee any potential implications in shifting somehow responsibility from the ship to the so-called control room ashore.
Sorry, can you hear me all right, Paolo?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, autonomous ship. What do we actually mean by autonomous ship? And these, again, in this digital world, we bandy these expressions around. I think most ships are already at a degree of autonomy. When I look at what we can control from our performance optimization control room, when I look at the visibility that we have, when I look at the interaction that we have with these ships, we are at a high degree of autonomy or semi-autonomy already. We can review passage plans, we can review fuel efficiencies, consumptions, sanctions areas, terrorist areas. We have all sorts of visibility on board and can provide assistance to the vessel. So I think there's a huge degree of autonomy now, but the question is, I think, more a different one. What actual autonomy do we need? And so much of this industry is the tail wagging the dog. We think we need to digitalize, so therefore let's digitalize everything because everybody else is doing it, or are they? What autonomy do we actually need? Is an autonomous vessel cheaper? No. It's not cheaper. It certainly won't be cheaper to construct, and the same amount of crew will be ashore on an autonomous vessel than will be on board. Is it safer? No. To be quite honest with you, I'd much rather have my engineers, etc., on board the vessel to deal with any safety issues that arise than on shore. Is it more efficient? Probably not. So, what do we actually need autonomous vessels? That should be the question, and then to what extent, and whether it's full autonomy or semi-autonomous. As far as from a lawyer's perspective, the entire law of the sea is drafted, the international law of the sea is drafted on the basis of master and crew being on board, and it is going to take years of redrafting to enable autonomous vessels to safely sail and provide safety for other users of the sea, the international oceans, to have that degree of certainty on the position of law. So I think we're a long way legally, and as far as autonomy, I agree with one of the last speakers. We're pretty much there if we want to be, but do we actually need it?
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Olav, what is your view? I mean, are we looking in the future to have fully autonomous ships like our thought maybe in for short sea voyages like in Scandinavia? And also, since you have worked there for a long time in classification society, what do you think is the role played by the regulator so far?
Okay, that's two questions. Let's start with the last one. I think the regulator is going to be, it hasn't really taken on the challenge. I think there is technology out there that you can implement and get a lot of the features you would like to have, but it's more driven by the possibility than the need or the cost benefit getting there. So there need to be a driver on it. I think on the short voyages, I think it's a perfect, fine, good solution to have autonomous ships. That's perfect. You can catch it up, you can do what but you going on an ocean voyage, leaving, you coming into, and then it is technology that is about take a redundancy. There's one piece of equipment that's not redundant on the ship, and that's the main engine. Okay, then we need to build a different set of redundancy and prove that is worthwhile having. So we started talking about looking from a different perspective. But I think the regulators are they haven't taken on what need to be done, because I think around it today we have a lot of technology that can help us becoming better on the crew side, on the maintenance, on the issue. But then of course we as an industry need to implement, and we need to have drivers that gives us the benefit. There's a cost benefit of this. If that is not there, why will we invest in the technology? Yes, the one thing is that the regulators force on, or we are driving by environmental, the regulators are forced to take action on some specific issues. Of course, the environmental, the better fuels and all that, less on the emission side, which we have to do all to get on. That will do changes, but will that force autonomous ships? I don't think so. I think it will kind of improve on that level. So moving forward, I do see that technology, there is technology to that we can implement and drive some of this. The regulators is not on, they're not there to kind of, what are we going to do with manning? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do the port calls and, all that kind of stuff. I think there's much more to gain on some of these and actually start looking for autonomous ship. Back to what Mark Cameron started with initially, on board the vessel is becoming an administrative hub for sending information and receiving information. If we can get rid of all that, we can do things differently. Yeah? If things are data transfer, if data is sent from the vessel to the shore on all the clearances, no paper, anything is digitalized, then we can start taking on some of these technologies. It's a better quest, so to speak, to sort that out and to try to drive for autonomous ships in my mind. And I think it's going to be a long time before, or not a long time. I think it's going to drive regulators into this. They need to see a benefit on from the regulator. Safety, obviously, is part of their agenda. Environmental is part of their agenda. So we need to be a driver in there that actually take that further.
Okay.
On the biggest scene. That's my view on it.
Mark Cameron, would you like to add something on this topic?
Yeah, it's been a while since anybody's asked me about autonomous ships, probably because of some of my previous comments, but I think it's a red herring. I think the real topic for the entire shipping industry is decarbonization, decarbonization, decarbonization. I think as long as we've got reciprocating engines that go up and down and round, we're going to need people. Fact. And I think at the end of the day, if you approach it, as many have said, from a financial angle, you know, ships operate for 25 years in an extremely harsh environment. If you're going to reduce that down to maybe a 15-year or perhaps even a 10-year life cycle for the asset because of equipment changes and because of the reliability of equipment, your depreciation cycle is much, much shorter. I think at the end of the day, even if you say at 10 or 15 years, you're going to put all people on, so you're going to need all those systems to be installed anyway up front that you were previously thinking you were getting the advantage of from operating them more autonomously. I've no doubt that change will come, and change will come as a result of the decarbonization strategies and important initiatives that are taking place in that way. As a spin-off from that, we will definitely have more autonomous elements of shipping. But I don't think that it is all that it's cooked up to be. Sensor failures in today's world are, you know, as Stephen was saying, you know, that equipment is generally pretty reliable. I beg to differ about both main engines and sensors that are associated with them. And Olav's nodding because you know that we have a lot of real problems out there on ships today that don't tell me that we have the reliability that we perhaps think we have. And that's a problem. So I think we're a long way away from automated ships to the way that we think we're talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe there is time for another question yet. I would like to know very quickly, maybe Mark O'Neill, you could answer on that. If you believe that, like what is happening, for example, in automotive with the disruption from Uber, if traditional roles in shipping could change in front of this increased transparency brought by digitalization of assets.
Could you repeat the start of that question? Sorry, Paolo, I missed that.
Yes, if you think traditional roles in shipping, like in particular do intermediators, could change in front of the increased transparency brought by the digitalization.
Okay, I'm still not sure I understand the question, but I think all of our roles are changing in this business, and of course they have to. And the one important point I would make, though, and we've mentioned the word several times, is that people will remain at the core of our business for not just the foreseeable future, but for future period. And I think digitalization is a tool to enhance human performance, not replace it. And I think that's what we've got to remember. Of course, all our roles will change. As we go down more the autonomous route, there will be more people ashore controlling the very vessels that previously were on board. The roles will change. We don't even know some of the names of the roles yet. You know, we've seen a huge, in the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen huge changes to our business models. All of us sitting on this panel that we never thought would happen. And you know, if we just take working from home as an example, how many of our businesses here will now have to have some element of working from home and have to have technology and different roles to enable that going forward. So I think yes, there will be very different roles and responsibilities going forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all of you. Of course, it was very interesting, and there would be, of course, more and more questions. But so far, what I would suggest is to move to the Capital Link chat for the Q&A session with the audience. Thank you again.
Thank you, Paolo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.